Hey, it's Karina Reichman, and you are listening to Comes a Time with Oteil Burbridge and Mike Fenoya. If you're digging the podcast, do these guys a favor and review and subscribe. It means a lot. Be sure to follow the pod on social media, YouTube, and if you're joining for bonus episodes and exclusive content, go to patreon.com/comesatimepod and get on the bus. And now, here's Mike and Oteil.
What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Comes a Time podcast. That's Oteil.
And that's Mike. We got a real good one for you today. I just got done playing with Lettuce in Mexico, a dead ahead, and the bass player, Jesus. I've only known him as Jesus. I've actually, when I got the email, I was like, oh, his name's Erick. Okay. Erick Coomes. He texted me, and I wanted to have him on the podcast again. He came on with Deitch, right?
Yeah, a while back.
But this one time in Asheville, he came to see us at the salvage station. And we were playing out back. There's outdoors, big field. There's this one light out there. It looks like kind of a light that would light up a high school football field. And it started to rain. And he goes, oh, no, I got to see Oteil's band. No. And he walks out to the middle of the field, throws up his hands. The light goes out and the rain stops. And I was like, wait. And Eric Krasno was standing right next to me. And so I was like, did you see that, man? He was like, yeah, I saw that. I was like, and Krasno goes, he does that sometimes. I was like, all right, okay.
The weatherman.
Yeah, a PK man, like what Jeffrey Mishlove talked about when he came on the podcast. I think we talked a little bit about the PK man. He wrote a book.
We did.
About a guy that he could make lightning strike, could make storms happen. Anyway, so he texts me after Mexico. Oh man, it's so good to play with you. God loves you so much. Keep vibing up, spreading the light. I was like, man, thank you so much. Hey, would you come on our podcast and talk about that time where you did the weather thing?
Well, I have you.
Yeah. So I said, he was like, sure, I'd love to come on a podcast, blah, 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 blah. And then he didn't say, I said, remember, so I circled back around. I was like, you did do that thing with the weather, right? And he goes, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
And we discuss it in the podcast.
Yeah. And so that's why I wanted to have him back on.
So all of you can hear it.
Yeah. But then his dad came on. His dad's in the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, Tommy Coomes. Went in the same time as Aretha Franklin. I mean, you can die after that, right? I could, right? But then Jesus has this whole other resume that he's played with all these rappers. He's from LA, him and his older brother, Tyler. So DJ Quick, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Anderson .Paak. He said Anderson, I'm guessing that's Anderson .Paak, Anthony Hamilton, High Tech, Ice Cube, Rakim, Quincy Jones. I mean, y'all, what?
Murderers Row, dude. Yeah.
That was, I saw he was a bass player from Lettuce, which is a lot. That's saying a lot.
Yep.
I didn't know about all this other stuff or about his dad being the guy. And this episode it's great. It just goes by its own design. You know?
Yeah. And also I would just like to say from the two of us to them, our extreme condolences for the loss of their mother and wife, and we get into that in the podcast as well. And thinking about being in Mexico, watching 2 full sets of them playing and how he was able to, I don't know. It's really makes it even doubly, triply special because they tore the roof off the plate.
Yeah, to even come on a podcast like your mom and your wife died 10 days ago.
Yeah. Well, they're buddies, so it was nice to see them, That's all. You guys will love it. We'll save the rest for you. But thank you. The Coomes is that how you would do it? Plural?
Yes, the Coomes.
With an apostrophe after the S. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. If you want more, go to patreon.com/comesatimepod for bonus content each week, and like and share and subscribe and all that stuff. And go follow Lettuce and watch Lettuce and Google Tommy Coomes. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Lettuce, it's good for you.
Yeah, it's crispy and fresh, you know. Well, I'm Jesus from Lettuce, and this is my father, Tommy Coomes. He's a legend, and he's the person I look up to the most.
Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too. I told him not to steal all my funk records, but he wouldn't listen. All that Memphis soul and Motown stuff.
Memphis Souls too.
Oh yeah, we did that. Yeah. Anyway, I don't have to be here, guys, but I'm happy to be here.
I want to ask you something.
You absolutely do have to be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I heard, and I forget who told me. It might have been your brother, Tyler, right?
Yeah.
I said, why do they call him Jesus? And they said, because he wasn't supposed to live. He is a miracle baby. Can you tell me the story about that? Is that true? And that I'm misremembering it, or?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. He almost died when he was 6 months old. He had acute peritonitis, where you would normally get strep throat and went down into his abdomen. The doctor said they've never seen that before, and they had to cut him wide open, take all his intestines out and all that nasty stuff. And I've got a picture of him in an incubator when he's 6 months old. And I'm telling you for sure, my life would be different had this guy not survived. But that's not how he got the Jesus thing. But it is a wonderful story. He got it from hanging out with DJ Quick for years. And you know how you bring the posse and there's all these guys sitting around for hours. And Erick would be the guy with the long hair going, guys, come on, can we just get to work and make a hit? I came here to make a hit record. And they start calling him Baby Jesus. Oh, Jesus is pushing us again. And then somehow over the years, he just got down to Jesus over a period of time, right?
I wouldn't say anything. I would just sit there and wait to play bass. But I also wouldn't do any of the, extraneous activities that were happening. I just wanted to play music, But they're like, wow, we put everything in front of him and he won't touch anything but the bass. So.
I could have sworn it was just his birthday, too, DJ Quick.
Oh, yeah, DJ Quick. See, that's the thing, what you said. I wouldn't be the same.
His birthday was yesterday.
David Blake is an amazing human being that has really blessed me and put me into rooms with Mariah Carey and Bone Thugs and Harmony, and just every person I ever wanted to meet, and definitely introduced me to Dr. Dre and Rakim. And yeah, DJ Quick is just the man, totally nice, incredible person. And I owe him compliments every time I speak, so that's good.
There you go.
So he's
got one of the most unique voices in hip hop too. Just like, God, I loved him growing up. That's so cool, man.
Yeah, he's an amazing engineer as well. Go ahead, O'Teal.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, he just could make my bass sound like whatever he wanted the bass to sound like. And when I first got in with Quick, I brought my Yamaha, and there was you guys probably know Robert Bacon. He's a guitar player too. So he was working with Quick for the first, the 10 years before I was working with him. And I guess the day I walked in there, he had just gone on tour. Robert Bacon's a great guitar player, and he had just gone on tour. So Quick was like, my guitar player just went on tour. I need you. And so we met that day, and I had just come back from Berkeley. It was probably 18 or 22 or something, and started playing Rapper's Delight and slapping it. He was like, this guy's the greatest of all time. So the thing about Quick is he would pump you up so hard. He would, it wasn't you're pretty good at bass. You are the greatest bass player on the planet, and he would just feed you that every day. We're going to make the biggest hit record every day. So he just pump confidence into you,
That's awesome.
And then you would make a hit record.
Yeah, then we would make hit records. Yeah, and I did this song with him called Trouble. And I played the high end of the 6-string. I had gotten my John Patitucci Yamaha bass and played it all. I learned music on that in Berkeley. And then I was in the studio with Quick at his house, and I was literally just trying to play this cool little Robert Bacon guitar line that I had heard on his album before called Rhythmalism. And I was trying to play the line that Bacon had played, but I played it way up on my 6-string. And I said, "Quick, that's part of your record. It's really great." And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Let's record that right now." Recorded the high end of the 6-string, and it's a song called "Trouble." I was driving his Ford Explorer down the street, and I heard it come on the radio, and that was extremely life-changing to hear that high end. The way Quick had EQ'd that 6-string bass and made it sound like you can't even tell what instrument it is, and it's just like, it just made me so happy.
What a lot of people probably don't know is he's actually a really good guitar player too, but he doesn't play like most guitar players. He plays like somebody who's a producer trying to come up with a great lick for your record. He's always a parts guy, right?
Yeah, business minded.
So
Dad,
he got
no, just making the hit record. I remember when he and his brother went in with Anthony Hamilton to do some demos, which wound up 4 or 5 of those things wound up on his first record. I mean, he's playing a little loud and acoustic guitar, and he's playing some really cool rock stuff. And I'm going like, dang, that's great. And he was baby Jesus then. He was.
I think Jimmy Iovine had hired Anthony to do a demo of a song that Anthony wrote called "Red Light" for this other guitar player, and in the time we took to do the demo, we did Anthony's whole album.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got all this stuff, with from your dad. When I think of the way normal people, the way Muggles think of gospel musicians, they probably normally would think that they're not into this huge, diverse,
Yeah, that's probably what most people assume, but
you're into all kinds of music, it sounds like.
What? Oh yeah, I mean, it's Ray Charles. I mean, I grew up as a trumpet player for 14 years, so I still think like this, right? And so my friends say when I write something, it's like I think like a horn player, and I've been a producer forever, so I still hear it all in my head as if it's done, So yeah, I mean, I think we're all influenced by the things we loved over the years, right? No matter where you grew up. I mean, if you grew up in Detroit, if you grew up in LA, and I think today's younger people, man, they've got such a lexicon, a deep lexicon of all kinds of music to pick from. I mean, you look at the country guys. Well, some of my old style country guys go, well, that's not country anymore. I go like, dude, they all grew up with rap and hip hop and jazz and R&B and funk and soul. These cats want to rock too. There's not just. I mean, the old stuff's great, and they know all that, but they're not going to just stay there.
Yeah.
And you could see certain folks that not even maybe emulate, but are the next like incarnation of, like, I see Billy Strings and I think of Johnny Cash, because he can literally sit in with Tool. He could sit in with, Post Malone. I mean, he could literally do anything, but it somehow just brings that like energy with him wherever he goes. It's just wild.
I love Billy. Billy's awesome.
He is awesome, always awesome, and Molly Tuttle and some of these people. But the last Country Music Awards show they threw Post Malone right in the middle of it. He was having a blast.
I bet he sings some country too, and probably he's such a writer. I bet he writes country songs all the time.
It was great.
He's extremely sweet too. He's one of the nicest people. He was on Impractical Jokers, and he was like on set. He was like the sweet, calling everybody sir and ma'am, and he's just so kind and humble. And he's really great.
I met him at Coachella after party. And he was super cool to me. I didn't even know who he was. We were there like 3 or 4 hours early before the thing, and we were just talking. And I was showing him some drum set, and it was cool. He was super nice.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go back to what O'Teal was saying about my dad listening to every kind of music, because I think before he was in the church in the 70s, he, they were in a band called Love Song. And so I wanted to talk about Love Song a little bit. They're working on a documentary that's really phenomenal.
Nice.
But
cool.
In the 70s, before they were saved, they were in this band, Love Song, and they're probably listening to Beatles and Rolling Stones and just the band, the Earth, Wind and Fire, the band, Led Zeppelin, obviously. But so they're writing all this amazing music, and they were on the hunt for God. They were searching for the truth in life. They were searching for the love that would save us all. And so they were really musician cats. And your partner, Chuck Girard, was like hanging out with the Beach Boys in sessions doing Beach Boys. So they're extremely musical people already.
So he knew the Wrecking Crew and all those cats.
Yeah, the Wrecking Crew actually played on the first record he did. His name is Chuck Girard. He grew up in Central California, Northern California. And he gets a record. You know, back in these days, record labels were popping up every day. You know, we'll get your record deal. Comes down to L.A. The Wrecking Crew played on the very first thing, and he was in a group called the Pastels that had a couple big hits. Was touring with Jerry Lee Lewis and all his cats and Little Richard and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
But he became the #1 vocal guy, session guy in L.A.
Wow.
I got out of the Army about 69, I guess, and I met these guys right away and reunited with some guys who used to play in clubs and saw this guy, and his writing was great. And pretty soon, all of us were hanging together and living together and writing all these cool songs. But we weren't church guys. I didn't know anything about church. My dad was Catholic. My mom was some undisclosed Lutheran type. And we just weren't allowed to talk about. Yeah, really. See, I never figured it out.
Undisclosed flavors. Undisclosed
came from that part of the world.
Yeah.
So, they never talked about it. We weren't allowed to talk about it, and so never went to church. I didn't know about David and Goliath or any of those things. Just
Really?
completely unknown to me.
No,
So-
Jonah and the whale. You didn't
I didn't know
any of those stories.
I
You
didn't
didn't hear
know
about
about No.
the Good Samaritan. You
No,
know
I
any
didn't.
of that
I didn't know
stuff?
about the Good Samaritan.
And even so far as when you brought home, hey, Dad, I found Jesus. Your dad was like, get that out. You know,
yeah.
It's funny the way we think about it now that everybody wants that, but his dad was like, get that out.
Oh,
of here.
he almost punched me out. Oh, he did, and he was a big Marine guy, and I went, "Oh my God!" And
My dad was a Marine, and was a very anti-religion, but he didn't punch me out when I told him what happened.
That's
But you know,
wild.
hey, listen, every parent probably deals with this thing. Hey, Dad, I'm going to be a musician.
Yeah.
And a couple of things like get a job or go back
Yeah.
to college come up almost always, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, I was watching that new documentary that Danny Tedesco did on the section called Something Family. Well, I can't remember the name of it.
It's the section with Lee Sklar and
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Oh,
Yes.
it's so awesome. And so Waddy's talking about how his
Waddy
dad-
Wachtel.
Yeah, Waddy's going like, yeah, my dad never respected until he came to see me play with one of his business friends, and then he started saying, "Oh yeah, Waddy, he plays guitar, you know, like Glenn Campbell. He's a real."
I love it. Well,
but anyway, we all these guys in Love Song, we just saw something we saw the love of God in action without all the hoopla and circus acts.
yeah.
You know, people who really loved God loved each other. We went, okay, this changes everything, and
now we have to change the music because the church
Yeah,
music
and-
is not popping.
yeah, if I show you some of the pictures of places we played, I mean, we're a rock band, and I've got a picture of us in 1972 in Texas with a pipe organ behind us. And I thought, well, talk about scaring the church folk, you know. But anyway, it was great music. It was a combination of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the Beatles, and the Beach Boys.
Wow.
I mean, great writing, great
Yeah.
vocals.
Gotta
was
hear
great
it.
stuff.
And I'm sure all of it's recorded. You got records and stuff. I want to hear. I got to
You
hear.
can pull it up on iTunes right now.
I'm gonna-
Love Song.
Well, if you go to lovesongtheband.com, and make sure you got the band in there. Otherwise you'll get some romantic albums or something. So
Love Song
you
the
can
Band.
see a promo of the documentary. It's 7 years in the making. It'll be out this year. It's 3 1-hour episodes.
Awesome.
Wow, that's
I just
It's
did
about
like. So,
coming out of the 60s and the Vietnam War and Berkeley riots and Kent State, and then the whole culture going through a big change. And
Yeah.
we happened to be riding the wave. It was a good ride.
can't wait. I just watched one like that with Wayne Shorter.
Oh,
It was 3 or 4 parts. You know, or it was just brilliant. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No. It's
Yeah,
fine.
right
I was
on.
just thinking about how, like, gospel and how we take in information about other religions, other beliefs, like I think about, because I was always so like, I was turned off to church and turned off to like people preaching, and I was always like fearful of hypocrites and stuff, but I always trust music, and I would think about, just as you're talking, I'm thinking about Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and Tu Tibbert
And Jerry
Fela
Garcia.
Kuti and Jerry Garcia
Yeah.
and all of the Dylan, all of the folks that I learned all of these great tales and lessons and life changing stories because I trusted music. I don't trust people. I trust
Yeah.
music. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah, but
gospel
music
I
is made
love.
by people.
I think sometimes
No, it's
people are
not.
made by music. Sometimes
No,
you know?
we're not.
Well,
No.
I'll say
Well,
that
maybe we are in the grander sense, but this was I went through the same thing where I was like, hell is other people, and then I realized heaven is also. It's not that people are all trustworthy, but it's like science.
up at the perfect time.
No, you're good. We can still hear you. It's like the scientists that don't believe in anything that's not material. It's like, yeah, but all this the thing that's doing the measuring is your consciousness, which you can't measure. So you have to always put that on the table that, yeah, you can't trust people, but then again, the only people that you can trust are people also.
Wow.
Right? You know,
people that I guess you can trust God, and when a person is letting God act through them, you can trust them.
You can totally trust them.
And 30 minutes later, you might want to check again.
maybe sometimes too, it's like, you know, if you're not good at reading, but you like having it read to you, or if you're not good at listening to someone talk, but you're, you know, learn a song and sing along. Maybe if that's what I mean. Music is the conduit.
No, see,
absolutely.
That's what I mean.
This is where I think we all agree.
Yes,
I try to tell people, listen,
pastors.
try
to tell the preacher that the music is important at these things. Like, sometimes the music, you know, it's honestly we're about to do our devotions, which we read the Bible or read different books and different philosophers on books of the Bible. And this morning, we were about to read that, but we didn't have time because we're doing this. So I just threw on a song.
Oh man.
And that song just ministered to me way more than I think anything else could possibly have.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I worked with a guy a long time ago that had come out of writing jingles. He was super good at it too. And the people at Coca-Cola taught him there's no defense mechanism in the brain to a message in music.
Yes.
So there's something about it that just bypasses all those filters or prejudices we have. Like, so many people have been burned by religion and church and have a hard time ever thinking that, you know, in that organizational kind of situation, they might meet the presence of God. You know, a lot of people would rather be out by a waterfall or something. I get all that, and God is a spirit, but I love that when he said that no conscious defense mechanism against the message of music. And I think of Bob Dylan going, "The enemy I see wears a cloak of decency." Remember that line?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a certain amount that, listen, I would put it this way. If God ever made a mistake, which he hasn't, it's trusting man with free will. So he gave us the right to decide. And this is where we, you know, if you read the Bible fairly, everybody messed up really bad. Hardly anybody ever really got it right consistently. And so we're in that number. What can I say? You know,
the rabbis used to have a debate that went on for a long time that said, was God right to make us because we could never keep the commandments? Not one of us. Right? What a hell of a debate to have. Not was God wrong, but were we the mistake? You know?
I mean, without the Messiah, without the saving grace of the love of God and the grace of God, then no. But with
with
sacrifice
grace
and you're going to be all right, and like Paul said, not to go take that and be like, do whatever you want now. That's really important to throw in. But
you couldn't.
Yeah, there's it's interesting. You can read the Bible for a long time and still see stuff you've never seen, or, you know, your heart's just not in the right place. Sometimes you think it's just information. But when Jesus said, look, I'm the doorway in, here's what I would say to my friends who have trouble with that. It's like, okay, I'm in a house. It has a few doors. You can bang your head against the wall thinking you're going to get out of my house, but there's a door right here. All you got to do is walk through that door. And so it's an invitation to love, grace, mercy, and all these things. But we still want to go like, I'll figure this out on my own. And
it's in our nature.
It's in our nature
to figure, like, our minds just want to categorize and figure things out so bad.
This is, Oteil, I've heard so many good things about you and your kindness to my son, and no,
he's the greatest bass player of all time.
Well, I've heard that, but I love it. You know, Erick was fortunate enough to grow up around Abraham Laboriel, John Patitucci, and all these cats. I mean, he'd be sitting on the floor in the studios, because I've been a record producer forever, right? I ran a record label for a long time. And he'd be sitting right there with Ron Tutt, who played with Elvis, and Alex Acuna and
Weather
all these
Report.
cats, Tim Pierce and all these guys. And so he just thought, well, this is kind of normal. He and his brother both like, we can do this.
That's so cool.
Let me ask you something. I want to go back to two things.
Yeah.
One, and sorry, when I'm looking down, I'm not listening to you. I'm writing stuff because I don't want to interrupt, and I give myself permission to let you finish your thought, but not forget what I want to go back to.
Awesome.
You said something about
You're a good host.
music has no defense. What was okay?
No conscious defense mechanism.
When I was watching a UFO podcast recently, and this guy Christopher Bledsoe, who is a believing Christian still, even though he was ostracized by his church after all this crazy stuff started happening. One of the things came up through this podcast is that these beings can make themselves invisible when they don't want you to see them. But he said, if you think of a song or sing one or like whistle one, they can't cloak themselves. And I told my kids, I was like, I think the elves are the same way. So I told them, if you think you see an elf move, start whistling a song or singing a song. Because I was like, man. And then when you said that about music having no defense, like it can enter, like you can't block it out, I thought, oh, man, that's what Bledsoe was talking about. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there for the fans. And then also this thing, none come to the Father but me. I thought about that for a long time. What did they call it? My mentor called it the scandal of grace. Here's how I interpreted it. Because when I saw God is love, I was like, well, there we go. That's all I need to see, that God is love. So if God is love and Jesus says, I am and my Father are one, so I'm showing you what love looks like in human form since you can't see God. Yeah. Right? And he also says, if you become one with love, then I'll call you brother, and blessed are the peacemakers, so they will be called the children of God. So that means that we're all, if we do that, and he said, you could do all I could do and more.
Yeah.
Right?
That one always throws me. It's right. But it's true. That's what he said.
So then that changes everything about none come to the Father but through me. Just plug love in. None can come to love but through love. Now it's not so scandalous anymore. It's basically just kind of logical. You can't become one with love with hate or any other thing, even if it's just to the left of.
No, yeah.
Because perfect love casteth out fear, right? That's how I know people. I'm like, you guys are you seem awfully afraid to know this good news. Why are you so afraid? What you so scared of?
Yeah.
Oh, astrology's bad. Oh, I'm like, oh, the Magi were who? And they found Jesus by the star. They didn't know just where, but also when. That's astrology.
Yeah.
So how are you going to say the astrology? And they did just what I do to the elves. They found him. They made the offering. Right?
Yeah, I think if Christ was walking the earth today, he would get frustrated with his followers. Go like, how much longer do we have to stay with you? You guys are not getting this, right?
Just like he did back then. That's in the book.
Yeah, exactly. You have so little faith, but I think he would use your words. He's like, guys, why does this seem so scary to you? It's really pretty simple.
So many SKUs, so many products, so many SKUs. It's like, why are you guys selling God all the time? I told you, don't sell God, and don't charge people money for love and kindness, and don't judge each other. And all y'all do is judge each other and sell God all the time. Like, stop doing that, please.
That's what the sheep and the goats is about.
And that goes for all the yoga. I mean, that goes for everybody selling God. I mean, this is not just in this religion. It's like all the, I'm not judging anybody, but some of these people are charging money, and God is free, and love is free. The love of God is immeasurable. It was one of my favorite verses is and I've just been thinking about this all my life. Is like, you'll never know. And you know how you say people say, I love you more. God's like, you will never really actually know how much I love you. You can't. It's immeasurable flood of consistent love pouring at you 24/7 all the time, every moment of your life. When you think you're alone and you're sad, I'm pouring the most immense amount of love. You literally can't even imagine what I'm
It's
pouring.
just like me and
Just on your
Nigel.
face.
It's just like me and Nigel.
Yes,
I
exactly.
go,
It's
you're
Nigel.
too, you can't see. You haven't been alive long enough. You can never know like how much I'm doing for you in the background. I don't tell him that, but I'm
Yeah.
saying this to us.
Yeah.
Like the ways that I love you, I see you as a grown man already, and what I have to do to make sure how I got to improve myself so that you will be better up there. Like you just can't know how much I think about you and plan for you, and my whole life revolves around you.
Mm-hmm.
I care about you. Like it's the slightest thing I hear him, it's you stub your toe, you're not bleeding out. Like the littlest thing. I'm like, what? And we just can't imagine that, It's
Yeah.
we just can't imagine that. It's okay. One thing I want to talk about, I've been preaching a lot lately. I even said on the gig right before New Year's Eve, I was like, I've been avoiding it. I gotta preach. It sounds icky or whatever, but
it always does, yeah.
that's what I'm supposed to do, and I'm gonna do it. So I've been preaching love. I'm like, I'm not trying to convert you to any religion, but where I find love, I will talk about it. And that most definitely includes Jesus, right? So, but I've been talking a lot about the magic stuff, what people want to call magic. Now, Jesus, I saw you do this at Asheville.
Oh, yeah.
We were playing, Oteil and friends were playing in Asheville, Salvage Station. Shout out to Salvage Station. They were great. We're playing out back in outdoor part. It's a big field. There's this big light out there. It looks like what a football field, a high school football field stadium, those kind of lights that light up the field. But it's just one, as I remember.
It was sound check, so I was like the only person in the audience area.
And you had driven there to see us, right?
Yeah.
And so it starts to rain, and I see Jesus go, no, I got to see Oteil.
Yeah.
And you just started walking around. You walked out to the field, and you stopped. You threw your hands up. The light went out, and the rain stopped. And I was like, wait a freaking minute. And Krasno was standing right next to me. I was like, dude, did you see that? He goes, yeah, I saw it. I was like, bro, he does that? He's like, he does that sometimes. That's what he said. He does that sometimes.
Yeah.
So then when he texted me, Jesus texted me a few days ago, dude, God loves you so much.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, thank you, man. Hey, would you come on my podcast? Because I want to talk about that thing. Okay. I had this guy on my podcast. I just cut straight to the chase. I was like, yeah, it was great to see you. Hey, man, what about that time I saw you stop the rain? Because I had a guy on my podcast called Jeffrey Mishlove. He's the only cat in the United States that has Doctor of Parapsychology on his diploma. And he wrote a book called The PK Man about and with this guy called the PK Man, which I think his name was Ted Williams. It's a real character. But he could make lightning strike. He would call it. He would say, I'm going to do this, and it's going to make the San Francisco Chronicle. And then it did.
Wow.
Whole thing stopped a drought. Like he said, I'm going to make it just. And then, so when you did that, I was like, he's a PK man. Holy crap, I know one. So I asked you, and you were like, yeah, I actually can do that. So can you talk?
I literally just pray to Jesus. I mean, I have my own ways of going about things, but, ask in my name and believe. And I think the most important part is the believing and the faith,
But you said that. You said, I believe it'll happen, and I expect it.
I think that's part of why. I mean, I remember my only thing I can kind of relate to when Kraz said he does that sometimes is there's been many, like 5 or 6 festivals where it was raining, pouring, and every act got canceled except for Lettuce. And I've always just prayed over our band heavily, and I consistently do that. I pray over my family and my band and any traveling. I just pray hard about stuff. So whenever those things would happen, I'd pray really hard that the rain would let up for our set, and it would do it every time. So I mean, it's just a really strong prayer life and believing. Though, but ask. It says, "Ask anything in my name and believe, and it will be done. You will move mountains."
But it also says, "Don't doubt." And that's what you said. It's like you're asking, but you're actually expecting.
Yes.
And it's like it's like I wrote a song called Two Hands once, and one of the lines says, "If there's a doubter in the crowd, we ask you not to leave." And I'm the doubter. The guy who wrote the lyric with me said, "I was the doubter. I didn't know anything about this. I'm just watching this, going like, how do I get from here to there?"
And it makes you uncomfortable, and he probably wanted to leave. So he was like, "Hey, if you're feeling how I was feeling, don't bail out right now."
I think that's what happened to all my friends in Mexico, because once I decided to not run from preaching and just step into it, now I do preach to my friends. This is real. All the stuff they tell you is not real. It is real. This time we live in is trying to poo-poo it, but that's all wrong. Yeah. And if you believe, I said, it's not just for me. Oh, well, good things happen for you. I'm like, no. And this weekend, when we started doing the offerings, man, if you got within 5 feet of us, if it was a friend of a friend, blessing just got all over you. And I see they're all like, all these people are like, I call them wounded Catholics or non-observant Jews. I get it. But they saw the most non-believing, and I was like, you see this, right? This is not, they're like, yes. You have to experience it. You have to experience it.
You have to kind of see this invisible thing called the kingdom of God.
There.
And I remember one time we were in the Crenshaw district watching Cy Smith play, and with some of these people, and
Lamert Park.
And Tyler and Erick were both playing. And one of Andre Crouch's singers was going through a hard time. Her daughter was on drugs or something, being really rebellious. And Erick just listened to her talk for 20 minutes, pouring out her heart. And I couldn't believe it. He's like 18 or 19. He says, "Well, Patty, she just needs the personal visitation."
Yes.
And I just thought, where did this wisdom come from? It's like, until the love of God touches your heart. And by the way, I just think we need all new language for these things.
Yeah.
All the semantics is what's getting us hung up.
It's getting in the way, man. But when a friend calls you, like my wife just died 2 weeks ago, unexpectedly.
My mother.
His mom.
I had no idea.
I'm sorry. I almost didn't want to do the podcast.
But
it was just 10 days ago.
It's like getting hit by a semi truck from both sides, because we didn't see it coming, and a large part of why we are who we are is because of her. But then all of a sudden you realize this love of God that you enjoy when things are going good, it meets you also when things are the hardest that it could be. And it's our friends calling us. I mean, you wouldn't believe our neighbors. Everybody acts like we're starving to death. They're shoveling my sidewalk. They're bringing over, cinnamon rolls.
And then people that I haven't talked to in 20 years calling, not knowing what's going on. Just, hey, I just thought I'd check in today. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's connection. Yeah. We're all connected to each other. And God loves all of us, but he doesn't even have to love all of us separately. We're all one, and he loves all of us at the same time.
And one of the things I find interesting, a lady that was my personal assistant when I ran the label for a long time, she passed away, and at her funeral, everybody was kind of making fun of how ornery she was. And I said to myself, sometimes we love the ornery ones the most, because they're comical. They don't fit a mold. They say exactly what they mean and put their foot in their mouth and go like, I love all of that. Because we're just so human. And it's like, if we can allow each other to be who we are and respect the differences, then that's when real joy happens, I think. Yes. I can't change anything about myself. I got to work on it so hard. Why am I trying to change somebody else? Why don't I just enjoy their gift? And that's a lot more fun, I think,
And those neighbors that are bringing cinnamon rolls or shoveling your driveway or your walk, I'm sure that they're in their hearts going, I hope that this is enough to show how much I loved her and how much I love them. And you know what I mean? Like, we all have those moments where it's like, when you're brought, I've been calling it lane assist lately, where it's like, we're in the middle lane is, you know, our where we'd like to be, and sometimes we drift from lane to lane. We end up in the breakdown lane before we had beep 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 and brings you to, you know. So a lot of times when we're brought a situation like that, a tragedy like that, and I'm so sorry to hear that for both of you and everyone who knew her, but sometimes that brings us to lane assist and says, like, what's important right now? It's my neighbors that are hurting. Let me do anything I possibly can to just, like, let them know that they're not alone. Some people don't know how to verbalize it. Some people don't know how to maybe put it in a card, but it's the love is in the cinnamon rolls. The love is in the shovel, you know, the love is in the sand they may put on the sidewalk or whatever. And that's a moment that brings us all kind of, like, you know, to that point of, like, okay, how do I show these people love, you know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it boils down to what's important. I've interviewed a lot of people on video, and the last thing I ask them is, like, what's important now? And one of the best ones was my friend Don Moen, that said, God, family, and friends. That's it, man.
Yeah.
And because we're enchanted with a lot of things. I collect watches. I collect guitars, and I'm always looking for the next best guitar.
But Shelley, we should just speak about Shelley. Okay. My mother, and she was just an amazing person. And Tommy was hinting at it a second ago. Dad was hinting at it. But, like, everybody's individual and unique, and, like, the kind of love she gave was truthful. It wasn't, because I've been like, there's a tough love, but I wouldn't call it tough love, because she was really extremely sweet and gentle, but would tell you the truth. And she wouldn't just speak like I speak right before it gets to my brain. It just comes up from my heart and goes out. But she would let it get all the way to her brain and then stop and think about some, or tell you the next day, hey, you know that thing we were talking about a day or two ago? I've been thinking about that. And
that's a gift, man.
Yeah, she would just really give you the truth, but she would put it in a nice way most of the time. And this intelligence with kindness is very rare. I find intelligent people have a lot of trouble being patient with the less intelligent. So but you know, and having someone that's intelligent and kind at the same time is just such a blessing. I'm so lucky to have had the mother. And I just wanted to say, when we were born, when I was born, my mother was a natural childbirth teacher, teaching hundreds of women to have babies without using pharmaceutical drugs and not take the pain pills, because they're, you know, it's in the 70s, everything was coming out. They were starting to eat carrot juice, starting to eat brown rice. They were starting to wake up to the poisons of our earth. And they were like, hey, you know, if you eat all those heavy drugs, your baby is eating those drugs with you.
Yeah, man.
So I would wake up and there'd be 50 women in my living room learning Lamaze and learning how to breathe correctly to have a baby. And so I'm just so lucky to have seen all that go down. And like we were talking about, I guess just when I became an adult or anything like an adult, there were women come to, your mother helped me have all 5 of my beautiful, healthy children, and they're flourishing, you know, adults now. And so these women all remembered that. And I think it's just awesome what she did. And he had a music career. They met around Love Song in the church. And so when they had us, they said, well, one of us is going to have a career, one of us is going to stay home. So she decided that she would stay home and be the mother, and she just wanted to put everything into mothering Ty and I. However good that came out, I don't know. We try our hardest.
She grew up in a single mom household, and she just determined that I'm going to be the mom that just pours myself into my kids. But you guys will appreciate this. So everybody's famous for a few minutes, right? So this Love Song band was extremely famous in that world. And when I decided that I would get off the road for a while, because bands have a way of breaking up every few years or 4 years, and it just tears you up so bad. I thought Love Song would go on and on and on. It was such a great band.
Tore me up when gosh. That's why I've never gotten married, because I don't want to get a divorce, and Lettuce is going to be together for the rest of time.
You're married to Lettuce.
Because of Love Song breaking up when I was a kid, and I was like, what?
But the thing is, Love Song is still, we break up and make up. You know how bands do that? So
Yeah.
I decided I was going to get off the road, and I started running a record company and started the publishing company. And that allowed me to stay home and be with my kids. But after 3 or 4 years, people forgot about me being famous. They would go, "Oh, you're Shelley's husband." And Shelley would go, "Yeah."
Cool.
Shelley would tell people, "I had 400 babies."
Oh,
And they
that's
would go like,
great.
"Oh, you're Shelley's husband." And she became the famous one. So it was
I
fun.
love it.
yeah. She told me stories about after she was doing a lot of classes, she would get a call from a doctor and they say, "Hey, this lady wants you to come down to the hospital. She needs you here." And so she would come down to a hospital, and she told me, I was pretty much petrified of hospitals. I didn't like them. I was doing the natural way. I didn't trust doctors. I shouldn't say it all the way like that, but she had a fear of doctors and hospitals. But she would get called in and they'd say, "Oh, we've been trying to have this baby for hours." And she would say a couple of words to the lady. 15 minutes later, the baby's out. And they've been trying for hours to have this baby.
But there were techniques, really. She had her sit in a place where gravity was working.
Yeah.
But the hospital started losing business. So if you follow the money, then all of a sudden they started having this home birthing experience in the hospitals, right? With midwives again, the way it could have been. Instead of doing C-sections at the doctor's convenience.
And having the person lie like this with their legs flat, and you got all men trying to teach a woman how to have a baby. It's like in Africa, the woman goes against a tree, puts her hand on the tree, and the baby slides out into her hand.
Gravity, use gravity. I never got that.
How did we get into this topic?
Just because I want to talk about Shelley.
This is
talking about the amazing.
How amazing, yeah. It seems like intuition was her superpower, it seems, huh? Like to know when to, how long to think about something and say it and be there. And wow.
Yeah, she was a great mom. And she was a really fun person too.
Guys.
I definitely want to ask you guys about this because I asked lots of guests this. We were talking earlier about, experiencing I've been in churches, especially down south, like black churches, where it's just so heavy. The music is so heavy, you can't not cry.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll tell you a quick story. Ricky Keller, who was the bass player that played with Colonel Bruce Hampton for many years, did most of his records.
Okay.
When I had my experience, when I heard those voices talking to me, I talked about it a lot. On stage and stuff, and Ricky Keller calls me up. He died right after this too. I was in Atlanta one time. He calls me. He wants to have dinner with me, and I was like, "Sweet, okay." He gave me an amp one time. I don't think I ever even gave it back. It just I needed. My amp blew up. He gave me this PV. I was with the Colonel, and we took it out forever, And so we're having dinner, and he says, "Oteil, this thing that happened to you, tell me about it." So I tell him the whole story. It's kind of a long story. Mm-hmm. And he goes, after I'm done, he goes, "Let me tell you something. I don't want you to let anyone ever talk you out of believing that was real." Now, I didn't know him to be a religious guy, go to church at all. But one of his tight partners was the Reverend Oliver Wells, who was Earth, Wind & Fire's musical director at one point, and just a genius. I know he was. So
they pretty much hung the stars.
Yeah. So I think Oliver Wells took him to an Earth, Wind & Fire show, and he's backstage with all of them.
Yeah.
He tells me this story after he says, "Don't let anybody ever talk you out of this."
Yeah.
He says, "I went backstage to the show, and before every show, they all get in a circle and they hold hands and they pray, and I was included in that circle." And he said, when the prayer was over and I opened my eyes, my face was covered with tears. I didn't even realize that I had been crying.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oteil, I felt the Holy Spirit. It was evident all over." He said, "Don't let anyone ever talk you out of it." And I said, "Well, I won't." They couldn't, because what happened to me was so beyond. It's how Mike and I met. When Mike and I had our podcast, and I get to it quick. When I resonate with someone, I'm like, I will tell you stuff that I probably shouldn't even tell you. I'll risk it.
Yeah.
Because I know we were brought together on purpose.
Right.
Right. And I said, and then he tells me the story of when he was really down and he had this Was it a mushroom thing, or what was it that they did?
No,
He
it
said,
was a. I
it
had
was a guided guided.
no, it was a therapy session with a
Yes,
a hypnotherapist, and I had
that was a hypno.
yeah, and I had a moment where like
And he said, only way I can describe it, Oteil, is that I met love. And I was like, ding, 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 ding.
Yep.
I was like, dude, I want to do a podcast about that.
yeah,
That's why we do this podcast. So I
that was
wanted
the
to
first
ask.
day we met. That was like a half hour
Really?
into us talking.
Yeah.
Really?
I tell people, they go, "How'd the podcast start?" I'm like, "Well, we were supposed to do a half hour, and 3 hours later, we're crying. Like, did we just
Yeah.
become best buddies?" And it was just like
Yeah.
it had to happen. But for
So
sure,
what I
yeah.
want to ask you guys is like, what was an experience that you had? Doesn't have to be like really strong, like I heard voices talking, but where that something happened to you, you're like, hey man, that can't be explained by anything logical. Yeah.
I have a couple of those. Mine, you got a couple of those?
Oh, yeah, I got a few.
I got a
Like, I graduated from high school in '64. Well, music was changing. Jimi Hendrix was soon out. I was in the army in Germany listening to Are You Experienced? No, I was here in the States listening to that and was like, oh, this is unbelievable. So, I've seen everybody growing up. I mean, you go see the Beach Boys for $3 and, the whole new thing of music. Then it all turned to kind of, our whole generation, we just kind of looked through some of the things that we're looking through now. It's like we don't really trust the government. Our leaders in business and politics don't seem to have, they're not really there to serve others, for the most part. And of course, there are exceptions to that rule. And so we just trusted authority, distrusted, institutions, religious, political, all that stuff. So you know how it goes. I never wanted to do drugs. The first time I saw my friend drunk in high school, I thought, Mike, if you saw how ridiculous you're acting, you would never do this. And yet I'm hanging out with people having fun, making music, and we're all getting loaded. And it's getting worse and worse. I go into the army, it gets worse again.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the truth. I'm in Germany. By the way, I saw Jimi Hendrix live in Stuttgart.
Wow.
He blew up 3 amps. And just before that, I took 21 days of leave. I went to London. First time there, standing in the rain, I see the doors
Eric, am I the one
of the
frozen,
airplane.
or is
Yeah,
everybody
you
else
are.
frozen?
And Jim, as drunk as a skunk, he's fallen into the drums and embarrassing the band. I thought, that's not so good. And then I saw Spooky Tooth, I saw Rory Gallagher, I saw Family, I saw Jethro Tull right off the street and loved it. It was a little bit like Haight-Ashbury, but our whole generation was just looking for answers everywhere we could find it. I mean, we were into every Eastern religion, hardcore vegetarianism, Paramahansa Yogananda, all the stuff that people were offering as an answer. And I kept getting more lonely. I wouldn't say I was depressed. I was just frustrated. And and everybody I was traveling with, we were, we were living on Laguna Beach, and we had this, what was left over of a bunch of bands we called ourselves a Laguna Family Band. We were fighting at each other's throats and unhappy. And this girl comes back into our life. We lived in Salt Lake City, and the guys were opening for Three Dog Night and Grateful Dead and all this kind of stuff, and really some great musicians. And everything's falling apart on us. And I get busted, I wind up in jail for drug. We all get arrested. And I started thinking, man, I never wanted to go down this path. And yet here I am, I'm paying the consequences for the decisions I made. And this girl comes back into our life about Christmas time, and she just came to check on us. And she told us about this little tiny church in Costa Mesa. And I'm thinking, church? I gave that a try a couple of times. I didn't find anything there. She said, oh no, it's people like us. It's about 200 people. Let me. So she drives us to this place that's like an old motel with, 2 stories, and it's full of all these young people like us. And she says, well, there's a bunch of people down here that you might want to meet. And all she said to me in the car, and I knew this girl, she was an unwed mother. Last time I saw her, very unhappy. I looked at her and she was radiant. And all she said was, she didn't preach. She said, my life is completely different now every day since I met Jesus. That's all she said. And I looked at her and went, she's full of life now and joy. And I didn't know what to make of it. And then a month later, we got, you'll love this. Well, 6 of us were living together. One of the guys is now a PhD. He was reading in the Bible and went, wow, look at what is this? Another guy had been studying with somebody else, and they got into a conflict. This is with the worst kind of conflict. Like, well, this is true, this is not true. And we went, well, what about those people at that like motel thing? Let's go down and talk to them. All we wanted to do is get them to settle the argument. We go down there. They invite us to come in and have dinner. And they said, you guys should come to church with us. And I go, no. But they were so like us, we just went by. And I walked into this little church, like 200 people. I was so broken and so messed up. I felt like these people are so whole. I don't know if it's okay for me to be here. But when they sang, here's how music touched me. And there were ladies with furs right next to hippies. And I went, I'm not seeing that in my world. I'm down here in Timothy Leary world. And these people, you could tell they really loved each other. And when they sang these simple little songs, there was no music program. There was no musician on stage. It was like going to summer camp.
It's just everybody singing congregation.
They're singing, and I went, and here's the conclusion I came to without knowing, no way of processing, no church background. I went, these people know God and they love each other, and I feel that God is here. How is this possible? And as a musician, it helped. Fast forward a little bit. I'm in jail. I'm paying off some court fines. I'm living with my parents. My friends, some of my other friends in the band, didn't have to go to jail, and they started hanging out at this little church. This is weird. I get busted, felony drug offense, by the cops.
Never goes away, by the way.
Never goes away. It follows you for the rest of your life, which is a drag. So my friends called me and said, we're playing an anti-drug rally for the police department this Saturday at the fairgrounds. We need you. I go, what are you talking about? So literally, we play at the fairgrounds, and that was the day for me. Like this hippie guy gets up and he talks about God. I feel I am.
That's Lonnie Frisbee.
Lonnie Frisbee. He's in our movie too. He
gets up. You heard him preach the Holy Spirit.
And I'm supposed to be singing. All of a sudden, I'm sitting on my amp crying. I don't know what's happening. And the next thing I know, I am on the floor, on my face, weeping.
Dude,
and the presence of God meets me there. And the way I can describe it, what I felt like was, and I was down there crying, sobbing for a long time. And I felt like I had been carrying a backpack of rocks around, for years, and it was lifted. And that was the turning point for me. And that was the turning point for the band becoming real and saying, okay, we don't see anything in front of us that's a role model. Gospel music was either black gospel or Southern gospel.
Yeah.
And we went, well, we're neither one of those. And I remember sitting in that house in Laguna Beach saying, we got all these pop songs, and we started writing all these new songs because of how we felt. And we said, well, I guess we'll just have to find our own way. And we did the Troubadour, and Ahmet Ertegun was there. We met with Ahmet Ertegun for almost all day the next day in the Beverly Hills Hotel. And we met with Columbia people. We met with Bill Halverson, who just come off Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And he said, man, I'd really like to produce you. And we turned him down. Just so stupid. But
I mean, I think I want to just get back to what you were saying about you went to that little motel, and it just made me think of that little fun kid song that says, but it's also a verse that says, you'll know us by our love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
And it's like you see that love and you know that you got it.
And just to close that, I was 24 years old, and I said, how can you walk this planet for 24 years and never see the kingdom of God in operation? That's just so unfair. And one of the reasons I think it is because my parents' generation, we weren't allowed to talk about it because it divides people. But part of our conversation here is, okay, we've all been burned, but if we can kind of use English and communicate to each other the love of God in a very tangible way, which I think sometimes happens by just being together more than talking.
Because then when it happens and you all experience it together, because see, I thought it took me till 40. How could I be here this long?
Yeah.
And not have seen this?
Yeah.
But then when I read and I studied and now I had eyes to see, then I could go back all the way as far as I could remember and be like, it happened here. It happened here.
Oh, really?
Yes. You missed it. It happened here, 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 and here. And actually, if you keep your eyes really open, you'll see it every friggin' day.
Yeah.
In everyone and everything. There's a yogi who says, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all.
Interesting.
Exactly. Ram Dass had a picture of Donald Trump up on his altar.
No,
I experienced this too. One of these guys, these January 6 guys, he's been convicted. He is going to jail. I think his family's got a lot of money, and it came out in the Jam Band world because if he like got his trial postponed, I think because his parents are rich, so he could go on Jam Cruise. But then after that, no, it gets better. So my brother
storm the buffet one more time.
Yeah.
The ice sculpture's got to.
Yeah.
So then my buddy Brad Miller that lives here, shout out to Brad Miller, great bass player from Florida, from here in South Florida. He said, hey, yo, dude's following you on Dead & Co. tour, final tour. So then right after Dead & Co. final tour is Roots Rock Revival, the music camp that I started with Butch Trucks, the original drummer for the Allman Brothers band.
Yeah, that's a great title, by the way.
And Butch Trucks, I had a 15-year argument with about what we're talking about right now.
I have a 25-year argument going with one of my buddies too.
Yeah, so like
that's why we're friends, because we started debating and we still haven't stopped.
We started doing it, but he was the one that put Revival in the last name of the camp. I was like, you did? How can you not believe in the mystical when you're a friggin' millionaire? Because we're not up here doing math. But yeah. I digress, right? So then dude, January 6er comes straight up into my camp. I tried, you might be watching this, whatever your name is, I don't know, but I tried to block you. And God wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
Henry said, I sent his picture, his Instagram profile, and I was like, God's going to have to skywrite this one for me.
Yeah.
And Henry, the owner of the property, said, actually, we can't legally do that. And I said,
you can't believe everything you see on the television, bro.
Well, but the thing,
that's Hollywood. We have Hollywood productions. If you ever seen a TV show, the news is a TV show, and it's not. That's not
real.
Don't listen to it.
Corporate
listen to the news that comes from straight up there.
That's right. I mean, it's owned. NBC is owned by General Electric. Their weapons.
It's all owned by the same people. It's even doing a Zoom. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know that they literally physically. If you read the bylaws for what we're doing right now, it says they are going to take my likeness and my image, my expression, so that even when the Spirit of God speaks through Oteil to me, they're going to analyze how I react to that and then recreate it. And so you got to be careful
for other purposes. But anyway, this guy
it's written right down there. It's not a
back to not trusting people. Back to not trusting people or trusting institutions. Here's the real deal. I was in the record business for 25 years, and probably 15 years into it, I realized, okay, 90% of the things I'm investing in are losing money, and you hope that 10% come through. But still, I'm going to do these records because I believe in these people.
Yeah.
And it might be a subculture of people who appreciate it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. And then you realize so many of the people you're dealing with in distribution and marketing and sales, it's all about making the number and getting my bonus. Yeah. These are just business, realities.
And that goes into every field. Even a doctor is thinking about sometimes his money and stuff, which is sad, but you just hope that people are doing it for the love. Like we do play music for the love, but it does help a lot when they pay us for it, because you have to pay the people that charge you money.
And so there's certain realities, but for us, the reality is we want to make something from nothing that touches people's hearts and takes them a step closer to trusting that God cares about them and we care
Yes.
about them. I mean, for
Yes.
me, that's it. It's like I got a 7'6" grand piano upstairs. I'm a trumpet player gone wrong who got into guitar because of the Beatles, and now I'm
You sound really good. You sound really
no,
good.
I went to school once as a music major and second time as a business major, so that helps. But to me, I'm exploring. You know, the piano is sort of like a math puzzle,
Yeah.
and out of that comes this thought, and then you chase that thought and you
Yes.
finesse it and you bring it to a conclusion, really with the audience in mind. I mean, I'm doing it because I like it. And if I love it and I think it's funny and it touches me, hopefully it'll touch somebody else. But every once in a while I'll be playing piano and start crying about I didn't think of that. That was given to me.
Yeah.
And that's going to touch somebody.
It's just God speaking, the Holy Spirit, and whatever you call God speaking to you personally, having a personal visitation. But I wanted to ask you something, Dad, because my dad is what people would call a worship leader, and that we need to change these terminologies. The terminologies are all
I know.
worship. I know. Anyway, we're adoring and loving God back, basically, or even the word God gets messed up. But the Creator, this source of love that's pouring on you at all times, that saved us, that made you, that thought of you. You're giving admiration back to that. So they call it worship leader. But my dad has done this around the world for thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But I also notice when Bobby McFerrin does a concert and he gets the entire audience to sing a very difficult classical piece. And I'm saying, okay, there's thousands of people who most likely thought they could maybe sing a little or don't sing or can barely sing. And here they are singing Ave Maria in parts together, and it sounds incredible. So I want to ask you some of your experiences. Just, he'll get up there, I'm sure you got an acoustic guitar or something, and you're going, probably just like Moses, like, okay, you got me doing this? Why am I the one that's doing this? And then you just start to sing, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people start to sing with you. I mean, I'm gonna cry just thinking about just that alone, the power of the human beings that God made on purpose and put in musical instruments inside each one of our bodies called the vocal cord. And here we are, and you notice in every religion, but when you get up there and they sing into Jesus and they're worshiping God and they're adoring God together, the power of those singing and just creating a resonant tone with all of them together, and you're leading it. Tell us what that feels like.
Well, I think of myself first as an artist, as a creative person, and somebody who's a producer. I'm not the most talented person in the world, but I recognize talent like Ahmet Ertegun. I recognize Ray Charles. Yeah. Always had that. But what I like to do is I like to put together teams of people who are really talented and accomplish some specific purpose, whether it's an album or a live event or fulfilling a function. But for me, I produced a lot of what would be called the earliest modern worship movement kind of stuff, you know. And I know a great song when I hear one, and that's where I help other artists. So like, you think that song is just okay? Actually, this is the best song you've ever written, and this is going to touch the whole world. And you know, this has happened many times, right? The artist thinks, well, that's not my best one. So I get a call. I got several calls. I never thought of myself as a worship leader. And yet, I think I had 5 calls saying, would you please do this for the pastor that I owe my life to? And this little church now has got thousands of people in it. And I know the good songs. And
maybe that has a lot to do with it, because when you say good song, to get thousands and thousands of people to sing a melody and words, it's got to be simple, and it's got to be catchy and good. It's got to be a good song. It's picking the right songs.
But more than that, I studied a lot because I used to teach a lot. And I studied this gal that was a PhD who had studied why people don't sing in public.
Yes.
This is the thing. And she said, all of our life since we were children, we were taught to not do that. And people are embarrassed. They don't think they've got a good voice, whatever. What happens if you give people a song to sing that helps them express their emotions, whether that's, you know, You Got a Friend or Bridge Over Troubled Waters or Bill Withers. Who doesn't want to sing, you know, a Bill Withers song like that? Everybody wants to sing that. Yeah. So and what happens is you have to take down these defense mechanisms that people have against singing in public. And part of it is a good song, giving something they want to express. And that they get, so here I am. I have prayed, I've practiced, I know my people, I get these songs together, and I'm leading it all by myself, which I don't like doing. I'm a pretty good guitar player, but I'd rather be in a band. I'm exposed, man. There's no place to hide. Right?
Yeah.
I'm up there all by myself, and I'm prepared, and people just sit there and look at me.
And don't sing along.
They're not singing, and I go like, oh, what's going on? And
You're just singing by yourself.
I said, and privately, it's like radar. You got 8 things going on at once. You know, I'm eye contact. I'm remembering the chords, all this stuff. And I literally say quietly, God, they're not singing. And here's what I heard. Yeah, I know. It's going to take a while.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know.
So
He said, Tommy, I know. I can see that.
I had to lead them on a journey. And then eventually I found out this is what's important to them, and I had to help take down those defense mechanisms. I would sometimes just say, okay, I got the song I love. I think you're going to love it. Let me teach it to you. We're not going to start performing. Let me teach you this. Guys, here's your part. Ladies, here's your part. Let me hear you do it. And I build that confidence, and we put it together. Man, a month later, we were in a sweet spot. And people were like going, oh, thank you. We've been sitting on our hands the whole time. And I mean, but I literally would lock myself in my bedroom or my office and rehearse all these songs and pray. And I found, it was interesting. I found myself all week long praying for these people. Like, God, what do they need to see? What do they need to hear? What's the next step? And I'd be driving down the street thinking about this, because that's called reflection, right? And God met me there, and we went on this journey together that was really sweet. And I didn't think I could do it. I just felt like Moses. Like, why did you pick me? I don't know how to do this.
There's a guy that I know named Joe Craven, and he is the best teacher. He would play Magnolia Fest down at Spirit of Sewanee. Shout out to Beth Judy. And I would come to his tent, and he would do that. He would take a tent full, and it would always be packed because he was so fun. He dressed really wild. He was like a little wizard, you know. And I think I remember him having one of those mustaches that goes up with like that you wax and twist, you know.
Yeah.
And
sci-fi movie.
He would just hand people, here, you take this violin, you take that, and they would be like, you know. And dude, he would have them go, and I was like, he can teach anyone. And I learned a lot from that. I was like you say, that I'm not as good as him, but he could remove all those barriers, because folk music used to teach that way. When you go see bluegrass, if you go to a bluegrass festival and everybody has brought their instruments, like where do you go? If you go see Earth, Wind and Fire, everybody doesn't show up with their instruments. But they're like picking in little groups all over the parking lot, here, there, everywhere, right? And somebody who's not as good can just kind of, you know, sidle up and, you know, like they're just strumming along, but they're also playing with somebody a lot better than them.
That's so important for cats like you and I and all of us, that it's just like, we get people come up to us all the time, say, you're so great at music, da 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 da. I'm not musical at all. And I'm just like, it's in all of our nature. There is an instrument inside your body. Like, and that's why
there's a rhythm. You have rhythm from your heart.
Yeah. Say again.
Right. You have rhythm from your heart.
Yes. Yeah. Your
walking
is walking. All of its rhythm and melodies are everywhere. The birds are singing. You know, the Bible says, if you don't praise me, the rocks will cry out and praise me. Because like the whole, and I also want to throw that back in, is I see God in the handiwork of nature. Because you were saying some people like to just be at the ocean. Like when you look at our earth, it's just so awesome. And like some people are starting to dog earth and humanity. So I just like shout out to earth and all the water and the trees. The rocks will cry out. And I won't make them, because I will cry out and praise to God and praise to God's handiwork, which is you and you and you and you. And
that's what I tell people. I'm like, you haven't seen a miracle? Go look in the mirror. Jesus.
Good one.
What are you talking about? You know, Nigel did the other day. We were in Mexico. I can't do it because I can't whistle as high, but this bird makes us crazy.
Yeah. I heard those birds. We were just in Mexico together. Incredible bird
So a
sound.
couple of times I heard it and I was like, oh, listen to that bird. It wasn't. It was Nigel. He was talking to him. Remember my brother Kofi said that he used to, that he was really influenced by the birds,
Mm-hmm.
since he was a kid as a flute player.
Mm.
And I went, oh, Nigel got that. And he was talking. Then I'm starting to try to do it. And and it's just like what you say, the miracles, like they're all around us. Get a microscope or a magnifying glass, a big one, and look at any insect and then be like, what the, like, what's that, bro? What?
So check this out. I'm brand new. About 1970, we can get invited to go to Palo Alto and play. And I find myself in the house of a nuclear scientist physicist. His name was Lambert Dolphin. He had a PhD, and it was like on molecular stuff as well as space stuff. And he invites all these people who are agnostic, who don't believe there's a God. It gets them to his house on like Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, and he's a professor, and he gives a talk for 15 minutes. I still remember. He said, "What helped me believe in God is I'm looking through a microscope at the atoms and all the space." Nucleus and the protons flying around. Mm-hmm. What holds this together?
Yeah, man.
What holds this together? And then he started looking at outer space, and everything has got an order, and it's going around each other and all this kind of stuff. What holds that together? And then he started studying. God holds it together. This is a non-believer, and he said, and on top of that, I believe this is how Jesus walked through walls.
Yes.
And I kind of went, what? He says, because there's more space than there is hard structure.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what to think about that.
No, that's true though. Yeah. But dark matter, they just found, they're going, oh, yikes. Turns out dark matter is like 90% of everything. This unmatter, and matter's this little teeny bit.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but this is what brought the guy to like, okay, I can't explain this other than God's holding this together. There's got to be a God, and that's kind of the first premise. It says, in order to believe, you first of all got to believe that God exists and that He rewards those who diligently seek Him. Now for me, I was walking along in Germany doing a lot of drugs, and I look up, here's the full moon and the sun not set. Oh, yeah. And I know nothing, right? I'm going like, there's got to be a God. There's got to be a God. That was
not rocket science.
No, I like that. But so nature testifies and gives a witness. Right?
Yeah.
And then it took me about another year of looking for God everywhere. And then, of course, the place I didn't expect to find him at all was right where he'd been waiting for me.
That's what I was wanting to hint at, that because so many people look at church and go, "This is." I mean, it's so obvious. Where it's so in certain churches, most of them, it's really obviously not in there. So I think, oh, maybe that's God's funny joke. Is like, I'll put it right where you're just not looking because it looks so backwards. And all these people are hypocrites, and there's.
It's our free will.
God's just like, hey, it's in that place.
It's our free will, because I've been saying lately, like a mantra, love can use any road that's paved by evil, but it also goes the other way. Evil will definitely seek to use the roads paved by love. And Jesus talks about this, and they asked him, they said, well, how are we supposed to know? Because he says in the parable of the sheep and goats, he said, some of you that cried, Lord, Lord, like I'm your follower. Oh, blah, blah, blah. He's going to say, depart from me. I do not know you.
Yeah.
Right.
And so they ask him, well, how are we supposed to tell the difference if anybody can just say they're your follower? He goes, judge the tree by the fruit. Yeah. If they love one another, then they're from me. And if they don't, well, I guess they're one of the goats. And we have to be able to discern that as well, which is why we won't find God where we think, because the world has us programmed to think this way. It's going to be here. It's like, no, it might be just to the left or 180 degrees.
Yeah.
Because now you're looking with the world's eyes.
Yeah.
And
See,
it was
this,
just, you know.
this gets down to people and leadership. It's like, I don't care if you're running a festival, if you're running a record label, you're running the country, you're running the business, you're running the church. It's top down always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who's at the helm? Do they have the skills and the heart to navigate what's been given to them and get the job done and treat people right? It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You
And
notice when all the employees are really nice. Now I go right to it. I go, whoever's run this place is really a good person.
Exactly right.
They're going around
Everybody
each
here.
desk.
You mentioned that PV amp. Well, I was doing this thing called Promise Keepers, and I needed a bunch of gear, and a friend of mine was kind of an artist rep there, and I went down and I walked into PV. Every employee was happy.
Yep.
They would tell you, like, I'm employee 766. I've been here 7 years.
Mhm.
And then I heard Hartley, and of course Melinda was a big part of it. And Hartley owned the whole thing, right? And he said, the only mistake you can make when you work for me is to not try.
Yes. You can mess
And
up.
you try and make a mistake. And then he also incentivized everybody to go back to school and keep learning. And and it was just, and the guys would tell me he reads like 12, 15 magazines, and he'll send everybody in the department an article that might help them.
Yeah.
And I just
That's
thought,
cool.
cool.
And this is in Meridian, Mississippi. You wouldn't expect, you know, like being a black person, I'd be like, Meridian, Mississippi. When you haven't heard of a place and it's in Mississippi, it's like, stay the hell away from there. Yeah.
And especially when they pronounce it Mississippi.
Mississippi. Well, yeah, that's true. Mississippi.
Or
Coca-Cola. But yeah.
But I was thinking it
these little
comes back
places.
to, you know, having just lost my mother, it comes back to there's only that one kind of love. You only get one kind of love from the mother, which is what you're talking about, this guy who owns the company, how he should treat all those people. It's like, you can't do anything that bad where I'm not going to give you a second chance. If you care and you notice that you did it even, or if you're just here again the next day, I'm going to forgive you every time. I'm going to want
realize why I really needed you guys on this podcast. And it's the parable of the Good Samaritan. When Jesus is telling everybody, you have to love everybody. And they're like, love your neighbor. Well, who's our neighbor? It's like, you know, they think that's a bad thing. They used to call it building a fence around the law in Judaism, where you can't work on the Sabbath. Well, what's work? Now we got one commandment. We got 25 ones building a fence around it so we don't break it.
Yeah.
Is turning on the light work? Is making the bed work? Is cooking breakfast work? You know, not
surrounding the law.
Not in building a fence around the, and not in an authoritarian, controlling way. In a sincere, I don't want to break this law, so I'm building a fence around it so we don't accidentally mess up.
Okay.
Right. It's not about control.
Right.
Right. So they say, who's our neighbor?
Yeah.
Not the Samaritan. You know, like we're supposed to not interact with all. We're not supposed to hang with the Greeks. That's where the non-homosexual stuff is. Homosexuality is okay for the Greeks, not for us. This food, that's okay for them, not for us. This is okay for them, not for us. We, you know, so the Good Samaritan is almost like saying the good Nazi. right? They're not supposed to help. If you pass the Samaritan, be like, yo, one of your Samaritan buddies is going to have to help you. I can't deal with you.
Yeah, that I never thought about it quite like that. Yeah.
But
That's why the first three guys are making fun of him and spitting on him or whatever and kicking him because that was normal. That was the normal.
They just walked across the street and refused to help him.
Exactly. Right. But this is it. Now the Good Samaritan is the good Christian.
Yeah.
If I say good Christian, you'd be like, oh man, now here comes the eye rolling, and here comes the, and I'm like, look, I know I'm a banjo player. Now that I play banjo, I realize how banjo is used just like racist. Oh, he's dumb. I'm like, hey man, stop it.
Yeah.
Banjo comes from Africa, #1. So
most people don't know that.
Yeah, well, but I'm just like when
what
you
we're
say
looking
good
for is
Christian
unity for all the people and not judge each other by.
Well, wait, he's going somewhere.
Yeah, please.
No, but I'm just saying now that's good Christian. So
yeah.
I want people to I met many. Shout out to Baptist Church of the Covenant, because before I was a believer, or before I read it without trying to criticize it, I was living with my ex-wife. We had just bought our first house. We lived in the gay neighborhood because all the freak musicians and gays lived there. Because that's the only place we could live as an interracial couple that was unmarried. Yeah. She was a short blonde. And she started getting on me about going to church. And I was like, oh, please. Have you seen all these books I got? Like, my dad's stuff, right? So I'm like, we're having some friends over. A couple of our gay friends are over. And I said, you find me a church where we can go and not pretend to be married and let everybody know we're unmarried and living together in a house. We bought a house together, living in sin, right? And I'll go. And one of my great friends, shout out to Greg, I'm not going to say his last name because I don't know if he's probably come way out by now, but
maybe.
He said, well, you can go to our church. And my ex-wife goes, what? We mean a real church, not like the Fruit Loops church you probably go to. He goes, well, it's a Southern Baptist church and I'm a deacon and they know I'm gay. I was like, the record plays like, and we're just like, so now I got to see this place. I'm like, well, I got to see this in Birmingham, Alabama. Like, I know it's 1992 or whatever, but still, right? So I go. And sure enough, it's a Southern Baptist church. Well, the story is in 1971, all the white people moved to the suburbs, and the church decided to stay downtown. A black lady comes in. She wants to join. The congregation says no. The pastor says, no. It says right here, whosoever will, right here. And they're like, still no. And he's like, well, I'm out. Who wants to come with me? And 350 people left and started Baptist Church of the Covenant. And they're still there on University Boulevard. Shout out, go check. So now you fast forward. They're like, oh, well, we're supposed to let the blacks in, but not the gays. If I'm not mistaken, on my watch while I was still going there, it's the last time I went to a church and regularly. We had the first woman pastor in Alabama, in all of Alabama. Shout out to Sarah Shelton, beautiful lady. And the guy who was at that church when I started going to see if it was all true, Roger Lovett, shout out to him, to Dr. Lovett. He's the one that married me and my ex-wife. It was like, it's unbelievable. Birmingham, Alabama, Southern Baptists, good Christians.
Yeah.
Sorry if you can't take it.
Sorry if you can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Because the way I learned theology was after the voices happened to me. And they say, go back and study the Bible. Go back and read it from the beginning, but look for truth in it. Don't look for all the flaws because men wrote it. Right at that time, this cat, Jim Barnett, who's a huge Allman Brothers fan and taught religion at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. Was talking to Morgan Ponder, who went to my church, who was also a teacher there. And Morgan said, he said something about the Allman Brothers because he's like, yeah, their bass player goes to my church. He was like, what? First of all, one of the Allman Brothers goes to church and he goes to your church in my town. And he didn't believe it. So Morgan was like, would you meet him? I'm like, sure, I'd love to meet him. He's the one that taught me theology. I would have a question.
I guess I was just going to ask, why is there so many gospel songs in Jerry Garcia Band?
Exactly.
Bring that in the mix,
Exactly.
Like Magnificent Sanctuary Band. I'm up there on stage 2 nights ago in Mexico, and I'm like,
who is John?
Jesus. And I'm like, wow, is that saying marching for the man, marching for Jesus?
You know how crazy it is? Like, I'm up there, and you know how much of the population of the Grateful Dead is Jewish, and they're all singing these songs about Jesus, and I'm like, boy, you are something, dude. Like, wow,
I said.
This is surreal, right?
I know I've been interrupted a lot, but that's what I said before.
No, but see, again, it's not just the music, it's the people.
Yeah.
Because it came from Jerry. And when it comes from me and Jerry or whoever else, they can handle it.
Yeah.
They can feel. They don't have to listen. You could feel the truth of it. Because I thought the same thing, man. And when I started playing with Melvin at Warfield, I was like, there's a lot of Christian songs in Jerry Band. A lot. And look at Melvin. Melvin came straight out of the church. Jackie and Gloria came straight out of the church.
Yeah.
And they will tell you all the, God rest Gloria's soul, she's not here anymore. But you were just talking to Melvin's wife, Mike.
I was just talking to Melvin too. I was telling him all about Dad and love song.
Yeah, he probably knows him.
So
but Mel, they would say that I'm sorry, I just was one last thing. Melvin would tell us that Jerry would always get him his own dressing room because he didn't want them to see him doing heroin.
Ouch.
He protected Melvin. There's something about that church gospel thing that was a touchstone for Jerry. But go ahead, say what you're going to say, man. I can see
that at parties. When I'm at parties, people are like, "Oh, Jesus is here. We can't." They don't want to do weird stuff in front of me. Yeah. I think that every party I go to is kind of tame. I'm like, I think people are acting a certain way because I'm here.
Well, see, this brings up something we could do a whole other podcast on, and that's that if you grow up with faith and somebody says you can't love this kind of music that you love and be a believer, that's a conflict.
Yeah.
I mean, this happened with Little Richard. It happened with Elvis. It happened with Sheryl Crow. It happened with Aretha. It happened with everybody.
Ray Charles.
Whoever told you that is in trouble. They're in trouble. But what we have to do is we have to keep centered and still make music that is right and is culturally relevant. I mean, everybody wants to make something that's for now, right? But back to this thing of, I believe as a performer and as somebody who's on stage, they can see right down into your boot tops. Everybody out in the audience can see what kind of person you are. If you care about them. I mean, I've seen a lot of performers that are not communicators. They're really great at their craft, but they don't connect with an audience at all. And I'll tell you, I hate to say this, but when Whitney first came out,
we need to keep Whitney out.
No, let's keep Whitney out of it.
God bless Whitney Houston.
It took her a while. She was so petrified. She'd become so big so fast. She said not one word to the audience.
Oh yeah.
And I literally thought, oh, poor thing. She's just scared to death.
And you know what? That's really something to talk about, because scared and nervous looks so similar to angry and gonna
stuck up.
Wow!
And I think that happens when you're talking to somebody. These people will be scared to death to say anything, and that looks like they're angry and they're going to fight. So the other person will get angry, and all of a sudden they are fighting. So it happens all the time.
What I was trying to say is people see down in your boot tops. They see what kind of a person you are. And if they feel like, I like this person, I connect with them, then they'll go with you on the journey. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, I can't remember, it was Usher or somebody a long time ago. I saw this video. He said, I'm always singing to the guy in the very back row. I'm making eye contact with the guy in the back row.
Yeah, that's what Steve Martin said in Born Standing Up.
Yep.
He's like, you
Yeah.
come to the back row. I do
Aim
stand
for the
up
very
comedy,
back.
so I'm up there by myself all the time.
Oh
And
yeah.
literally that's like, you get 7 seconds for people to like and trust and want to do this with you, And I'll tell you one thing, Jesus, about Mexico, because I was in Mexico and I performed. I had to leave the Dead show to go perform at the other end of the venue. And I
Cool.
came back and I had a really interesting perspective of your guys' late night show. And it was cool because it's like I was outside of the event, but I was heading towards it. And the closer I got, the more I kind of felt levitating or like off the ground. Like it was almost kind of like there's just an energy around the stage that just brings you in. And then when you're there, you're not alone, you're one of the whole. And even if you're by yourself, there's like loneliness isn't even an option. So it's kind of like this, like a church itself. Like
It's
you walk in
unifying.
but I'm standing in this massive venue and you guys are over here and I could see the lights and I couldn't necessarily hear it just yet. But the closer I got, it just got more and more encompassing and enveloped the whole thing. So it was neat to see from the outside while everybody's there. Literally for a moment, I looked around and there was no one around me. And then I got in and you guys are playing and everyone's dancing and having a good time. And it's like, yeah, this is it. This is where we're supposed to be. So Dad, earlier you said, it would have been things would have been a lot different for you if he wasn't around. And I'm telling you, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people who feel the exact same way as you. This guy is magic.
Yeah.
And dude, it's always so fun watching you play. I really mean that. And you guys absolutely just leveled it this weekend. Both sets were just dynamite. And I'm glad you had two.
Thank
I'm
you
really
so
glad
much.
you had two.
I think that the late night set, we a lot of times get thrown into these situations where we're studying for, it's like studying, I don't know, this is what I did in school, but I studied right before the test because I knew I could retain the information. I'd be like, study a month before it. I know, kids don't do that. It won't last. You won't remember the song. I literally don't remember any of the songs we played 2 nights ago. But this is what we end up doing because we have to remember other songs for tomorrow night, which aren't,
Right.
I'm literally not playing any of those songs for the next month. I'm playing all these other songs that are very difficult to remember. So I just like to keep whatever's fresh for my head. This is kind of how my brain works. But I think because of that, and I even literally said this to each guy on stage. I said, hey, if I think the only way we're going to kill this and how we're going to kill this is being nice to each other. We have to. I might be on the wrong part of the section, and you guys are going to have to not look at me like crazy, and I'm going to have to not look at you like you're crazy. If you hit the wrong hit, you hit the ba-ba, but it wasn't that. You're supposed to hit nothing or whatever it is. The only way we're going to really have a good show right now is if we be nice to each other, and then that goes into being honest and open. Like, here I am. This is how well I know this song. I'm going to try like you said, the only mistake you can make is not trying. I was up there with my full heart into it, wanted those people to like it, know how well they know the music. I'm looking out at 30,000 or how many thousand people, 10,000 people, knowing that for sure they all know this song better than I do and the 6 people stage with me. So I'm like, wow, they're going to be hitting this really hard. I'm at least going to try my best and give my best attitude and be fully present here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did an unbelievable job of it, man.
I love what you said about not being alone. I mean, back to my friend saying God, family, and friends, that's all that matters. It's like, as I get older, this whole thing of community and friends just becomes more and more and more important. We're not designed to be alone, right?
No, man.
And the other thing, back on how to help people come out of their shell and saying, the fun factor. If you can let them have fun, like Sheryl Crow and Cindy Lauper got it right. Girls, they just want to have fun, or I got the feeling I'm not the only one. Yeah, I don't care what the setting is. If you can make it to where it's enjoyable and fun, and you're having fun on stage, then I think people come back for more. Yeah,
it's also that thing like Colonel Bruce said at the beginning of our album, Mirrors of Embarrassment.
I love that record.
This lady says in a real hardcore Southern accent, a stained soul cringes at the small details in the mirror of embarrassment. That's Missy Bowen. And what he was saying is you have to embrace the mirror of embarrassment. What this does is if I'm allow myself to look foolish dumb, stupid, whatever,
Yeah.
not respectable,
Sure.
not whatever. If I allow myself to be like, it
Even just
gives
not normal.
people, if I screw the song up, this is what's so great about the Grateful Dead.
Mm.
You have permission. If I really screw up, the crowd's going to be like, like erupt. You have permission to be messed up. Like you said, all that matters is that we're kind to each other.
Yeah.
You know, we could laugh and scowl, or we could make a mistake and scowl, or we could make a mistake and all of us laugh with the audience. And that's what happens with the Grateful Dead. It gives you all that permission to embrace the mirror of embarrassment. Just be kind, right?
That's what I always tell people who don't know about this scene is, you know, like you go see a band like Fish who does 13 nights, no repeats. And, you know, of course they're like, do they play every song perfect? And I'm like, no, that's the best part. Is like we cheer louder when they screw up, you know? And like, what a great, like symbiotic relationship. Like we go to see them try. And if they fail, we're there to catch them. It's like trust fall type stuff, you know? And that's what I really love about this entire scene. I don't want to go see perfect, you know, or if I do, you know, I want to see it once, you know, I want to see, same with comedy. Like I have a hard time telling old jokes. Yeah, they work, but I'm bored, you know, like I want to try new. I want to go further and push and see how, you know, where that takes me. And that's what I love about what you guys do. You know, Lettuce, you guys are batting 1,000. Every time I see you, you're just the greatest. Whether it's Toad's Place in New Haven 20 years ago, or here now, you know, like it's all good.
Wait, where do you guys live, by the way?
I'm like right outside New York City. I'm in southern Connecticut.
Oh.
I'm in Boca Raton, Florida. We are like triangulating like crazy.
Yeah.
Right
and
now.
gentlemen,
you're
in
in
Nashville.
Sorry. Yeah, he's got to go.
I got to roll.
That's all right.
I got to roll. But listen, before I go, you guys keep going. I just want to extend my like sincere condolences on your mom and your wife. Like I really, my heart goes out to you. And I know she was there with you this weekend, Jesus, playing, because everybody was. So it's a pleasure to meet you, sir. And thank you. I just have another thing I have to hit. I have shows in a little while in Manhattan and it's snowing. So I got to do my thing, but thank you guys. Please keep chatting.
Thank you so much, and much success and prosperity to you and your comedy. I'm a big comedy fan, so I'll come see your show. I can't wait to see it.
Check out my special. It's on YouTube. Oteil will send it to you.
You guys are like the bravest of the brave.
Yeah.
No, it's nothing. Love you guys. Thank you.
Love you too. Have a great day.